and welcome to another episode of Educational. I'm your host, Roy.
I'm Terry.
Of course, we're the podcast that brings you information on aging, on the aged. We hope to, if you're taking care of a loved one, we hope to give you some hints and tips that may make your life a little easier. And if you are growing old, such as I am, we want to try to age gracefully. We don't want to outlive our wellness. And so we'll try to provide some information on healthy aging as well. So today, we also have guests on a lot. So today's no different. We have Elizabeth and Terry. I'll let you introduce her.
Elizabeth Miller is a family caregiver advocate, speaker, author, and certified caregiving consultant. She obtained a BA in journalism from Penn State University and has worked in corporate IT and strategy roles for over 20 years. Elizabeth's personal experience caring for aging parents with chronic and terminal illnesses and for a sibling with developmental disabilities inspired her to create Happy Healthy Caregiver in 2015. Through her coaching services, speaking, award-winning podcast, book, and online community, Elizabeth helps family caregivers infuse caregiving and self-care with their busy lives. Elizabeth, thank you so much for being here. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you. Delighted to be here and to talk with y'all today.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit. I mean, I think Terry kind of outlined your story, but if you want to expound on that a little bit, kind of how you got here, and then, of course, some of the things that you've been doing for the last few years.
Thank you. Well, yes, the caregiving for me was not, an overnight crisis. It was a slow mudslide, frankly, that I saw coming and could not really do anything to stop it, even though we tried. I had two aging parents who had multiple chronic illnesses and also a mother-in-law who had lung cancer. So my husband and I found ourselves squeezed in the sandwich generation, taking care of two active kids in their middle school and just starting high school years, and our aging parents also in the peak of our career years. And we were overwhelmed and we felt isolated. So I was looking for resources that could help me. And really, I wasn't finding a whole lot. So I just started pulling in my journalism skills from the past, and writing became very therapeutic for me. I started layering on different things, became the certified caregiving consultant so I could not only learn the skills myself, but how to coach other people. And then the podcasting and just speaking, things like that, because I just feel strongly that caregiving, and in particular self-care for caregivers, I don't know how y'all felt, but I felt very invisible in the healthcare system as a family caregiver. I felt like people were really quick to tell me how I could take better care of my loved one. Particularly my mom is where I had leaned in with primary caregiving. And so she, had COPD and diabetes and mobility challenges and edema and sleep apnea. And, here's tips on how you can do better nutrition with your mom. Here's how you can get her moving more. But nobody was really seeing me as a family caregiver. And I just was not okay with that.
Yeah, and my dad, we had my dad had Alzheimer's, and for like at least a dozen years, and we lost him in 2014, but my sister and I kind of tag teamed, and we didn't, back then even, we didn't have anything, any kind of, it didn't feel like there was a community, as far as the caregiver and the self-care, particularly the self-care issue, because it just stacked on, just like you were explaining how it happened to you guys. Everything just kind of stacked up.
Yeah, you already have a really full plate.
Right.
Hey, let's just layer this big caregiving heaping, helping on there. And Terry, I'm sorry about your loss. My dad also passed away in 2014, and that's when we moved mom. They were retired. They lived in Florida. I live in Georgia. And we moved mom to Atlanta area. And then we also had to figure out what to do with my brother, who is older than I am, but has a developmental disability. And so we were Luckily, I have sibling helpers.
Yes.
We've got some in my family that are great helpers and some not so much, but we're consistent there. We know who to go to.
Yeah, and so many people have to do it on their own,
I know.
and being long distance. I mean, how do they do it? What kind of help can they get as far as if it's a long distance thing?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, for us, when I was primary caregiving for my mom, and then we tag teamed in my family at some point. Mom lived in an assisted living near me, which I know people think is like, oh, well, what's the big deal? She was in assisted living. It's still a lot of work, and she was grieving. She had never really lived on her own. She went from her parents to marriage, and I had to teach her how to advocate for herself. We talked about boundaries, trying to get her to meet me halfway on using the activities, and making sure she was set up. And it was a lot still on my plate, and I felt bad that I couldn't be there as much as I wanted to. The guilt was definitely thick. Yeah. But then I was lucky, like you said, there's always some things we can be grateful for in our experience, and I was grateful that I had the sibling help. And my sisters lived in the Northeast. I had a couple brothers here locally. So we did divide and conquer. The long distance help, they could, my one sister did all the bill paying. We just changed all mom's bills to go directly to her. Another one, my parents had a summer home in Michigan. She was managing that property. She was also taking care of all of my brother's responsibilities, because my mom was really no help with my brother. It's like we were guardians for him before we were really guardians for him. And then just locally, my other brothers, one of them ended up doing some grocery shopping for my mom. We were trying to divide up our visitations so that mom had more local company, she wasn't as isolated. So we did divide and conquer where we could.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you mentioned this misconception about assisted living, because I think it depends on where that person, your loved one, is in their journey, but it's a big change. And so I think, the way that you kind of, my opinion, it's like sometimes they can go into a shell when they make that move, and if they don't have that family interaction, and it's they'll sit in their room and just wither away. So I think that family involvement, to get them involved in their new community, excuse me, but then also, it's an unfortunate thing to say, but a lot of times we spend the majority of our time managing the assisted living community to make sure that they're doing, the things that they need to be doing and giving our loved ones the attention. So it's not.
No, it's not a cakewalk.
No.
I learned a lot through that experience. We actually had mom in 2 different assisted livings nearby. The first one we picked because it had all these wonderful amenities. It was like a country club, frankly.
Yes.
And we kept saying, my sisters and I particularly, and at first we were looking for a place for both my mom and my dad to live.
Yeah.
And then my dad passed away, and he was the stronger of the two of them, which happens a lot in elderly couples. And he was the glue, frankly, and he would have been the mayor of that assisted living. So right. we switched to just finding a place for mom, and we thought she would really gravitate towards the amenities and the activities. We set up her room beautifully. Everyone commented. We tried to make it as much like her home as it possibly could be. And we even stayed there the first couple weeks to try to get her acclimated and dine with her. And she just, like you said, Roy, she just was, my dad was the socialite of the two of them, and he was the one that kind of pulled her out of things. And she was content with going to her room, but yet would complain a lot, mostly to me about, I didn't get my dinner on time. It came up and it was cold, or, well, you're supposed to go to the dining room. It's,
right.
It's constantly. And I just, the phrase I kept saying with her was like, Mom, you got to meet us halfway. You have to meet us. This is part of your physical and your occupational therapy, is just moving and interacting with people, but you can't do it for them, and it's hard.
It's tough. One thing you brought up that I wanted to kind of talk about a little bit is, you said that your dad was the stronger one and probably the the healthier, weller one of the two. So that brings up an awesome point. And it's not just when it's an elderly couple. I mean, we've seen this with parent-a-child relationship, is that if you are caring for somebody that is that needs a lot of care, the caregiver, the percentages are really high that the caregiver will pass before the actual person they're caring for. And I don't want to just lock that into, spouses that are older, because definitely it happens a lot there because of the age. And of course, they may be in some compromised health. But we also see it with, a child caring for a loved one that, they will make themselves sick because of lack of self-care.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why we think that any family caregiver thinks that we can just keep running and running and running. Like you might be able to do that for a short-term caregiving sprint,
right?
Where it's just a quick hospitalization of a few weeks. But if you're trying to make this a sustainable life, you've got to, I think of energy as a synonym for self-care. And we have luxury cars, right, that we pay a lot of money for. And we think that we don't, they still need maintenance. They need premium fuel. They need a good wash, and so why do we think we can treat this vessel any differently? We are not superhuman beings. We need to keep energizing ourselves. Right.
And it's, and I think we've talked a little bit in the past, but we'll say that when we talk about self-care, we're talking more than just, we went to a movie 6 weeks ago, or, we went to, because somebody will tell you, oh, well, we went to dinner. But what they don't tell you is we ran in, we ate as fast as we could, and then we ran out. And that, all of a sudden that qualifies as a nice, relaxing dinner. And so, but there's more to it even than that, is that it's those daily things. It's eating correctly, monitoring our diet. We're so worried about what this other person is eating and doing, but we never think about ourselves. Exercise, getting the sleep and rest. I'll let you expound on that, but I think that's just it's a hugely important part.
Roy. Like, I think that self-care for family caregivers looks different. I had to go through this journey, and I know for me, even in the beginning, that was the physical self-care. It was the eating and the walking and the exercise and even sleep. I didn't even really think about it. I just thought, well, I got to eat and I got to move more. And then as I got more mature in my caregiving journey and started coaching and helping others, I really feel like there's categories of self-care. We've got physical, which I mentioned, but there's also spiritual, emotional, professional, financial, practical, social. Like, there's so many different pieces of self-care. It's not just about a pedicure and a night out on the town. It's more so about the little teeny tiny things we can infuse in our day so that we can show up for ourselves and be our best self and show up for others.
Right. It's like the old adage in, when you fly, it's put your mask on first before you take care of others, because if you're dying because of no oxygen, you can't help others. And it's the same way with caregiving. I think in the beginning, it's all good, but as we start to wear down, we're actually providing less and less care and help, and sometimes even could be detrimental to the person that we're caring for. And, I used to work do a lot of work with the long-term care, and that's the time when we used to see a lot of abuse cases come out, when staff was doubling over shifts, when they were, working days and days in a row, no rest, even personal stuff going on at home. And it's not necessarily all physical, but, we snap at people, we, say things we wish we wouldn't have. And that can happen even with family caregivers as well, when they get so tired and run down. Put yourself in a bad position.
Yeah, I mean, that's essentially why I started on this journey. Is I knew that if I didn't change what I was doing, I was at risk of repeating the same cycle that I was witnessing in front of me. So I had to figure out how to make self-care a priority in my own life. And I had just, the first thing I started doing was on Instagram. I started putting 100 days of healthy, and just looking for a little thing I could do, whether it was drinking water or parking further away, or, journaling my thoughts down for the day, whatever it was that I had just recognized, like, okay, I'm working on this. I'm making this a commitment to keep moving forward, because I don't know that I was completely burned out, but I was definitely charred. And I would
Right.
say that
Charred.
I was not liking who I was seeing in the mirror. I was the person
Right.
you were describing, impatient, short fuse, crying very easily, at the drop of a pin. Just like everything was, my emotions were just so heightened, and I just felt like I was sinking, frankly. And I didn't, that's not who I am. I'm just kind of, I'm more of a positive, see the glass half full kind of gal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just such a hard place to be. The stress of everything. But you found, you found some way to, I guess journaling was a good source for you, because that's kind of what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. And journaling, in fact, one of the first products I created was this book, the Just For You Daily Self-Care Journal, because I wanted people to experience some piece of that. And so on each day, there's like a little prompt to just, I think a lot of times caregivers lose themselves in this process. And so if this is a teeny tiny way that they can say, there is a person still in here. I still have dreams and memories and desires and things that I want to do and feel good about. So, and sometimes it's just even, like this one says, count your blessings, list out a few of the blessings in your life, just altering and reframing this whole journey of this mindset was a big part of me. And I think a lot of caregiving for me was just learning how to let go, because I wanted to control it. I was a control freak, and just accept that there are certain things that are in my control, and there is mostly a lot of things I can't.
Yeah.
And that's so hard. That's just so hard to come to terms with. But if you can become aware of it, or just acknowledge that you're not in control. Really, you're not in control of anything much.
Yeah, I went to some training years ago, and it's an interesting concept about our cups being full. And, because people could say something to you, if you're well rested, you've been eating good, if you're in a great place, somebody could say or do something to you, and it's like, keep on moving, never give it a second thought. But a lot of times, because your cup is full, all it takes is one drop for it to overflow. And this was such an awesome concept. I wish I could remember who did it and the whole, more details. But I think it's interesting because, like, if your cup is half full, another drop in, not a big deal. We move on. But, when we get to this certain level of just full emotionally, physically, everywhere, then all it takes is that one drop to just make it overflow. And the other part, we've talked a lot about this relationship, or the caregiver and the person that they're caring for. But the other part of this equation I think you have to take into account is that, somebody in your position, more the sandwich generation, you've got a husband, a kids, a job. That is such a small, it takes a lot of your time and emotion. I get that. But when you look at it relatively, that's a smaller portion of your life of things that are going on outside of that whole situation.
Yeah, there wasn't, you had to be intentional. I was not going to find the time.
Right.
I had to create it, and I had to, and I coach people on how to do this. We look at everything that's going on, and we figure out systems of how we can make this more sustainable, and where there are some opportunities that we can get creative with some things. Maybe there's a twofer, I call it, where you can, get a walk in and catch up with a girlfriend, or, commute somewhere and listen to an audiobook. Like there's, so I had to, I'm pretty lucky in that, like, my innate skill set is I'm a pretty organized person. I thought, if I can't figure this out, there's no, it's hard, because out of most people I look around, I'm like, I'm pretty organized. I pretty much can handle a lot, but this is too much. This is way too much.
Well, sometimes we grow into it. It's one thing if it's a if there's an incident and you kind of jump in, but sometimes we start out slow, and as the person we're caring for deteriorates, we start providing more and more attention, and then you don't really realize it until you're kind of at that breaking point. But it's been a gradual process.
Yeah, boiling the frog, they call it, right?
Boiling the
goes
frog.
In the water when it's cold. He or she doesn't know he's getting boiled. But it is caregiving is a lot like that. And you mentioned my kids and my husband and Team Miller. We had to figure it out. We had to my kids, first of all, were like, Mom and Dad, don't do the same things that your parents are doing to you. That's not okay. So they were on board with us prioritizing our own health and happiness. And my kids were, someone gave me some great advice that I work with. They said, you want to be dispensable. And I was like, what? I want to be dispensable. And they said, yeah, most of the time you want to be indispensable right at work. Like nobody can do what you do. But in life, things like I wanted to be dispensable because I wanted my kids to be able to be okay without our hands and everything. And so we had some sit downs with them. They were in middle school. One was getting ready to start high school when my dad passed. And in fact, I missed the first day of high school. You miss a lot when you're caregiving. I missed holidays and birthdays and some things like that. But we sat them down and we said, look, school is your job. Like you've got to check your teacher blogs. You've got to get your homework in on time. This is what we expect from you. We cannot babysit you. We do not have time. Daddy's helping his mom. I'm helping my mom at the time. Like, you've got to have this. And it could be embarrassing. Sometimes I'd get around with my fellow mom friends and they would say, oh, does Jacob or Natalie have so-and-so for a teacher, or what did they get on this test, or I didn't know the answers to those questions because I had set a boundary and just said, look, y'all got to own this stuff. And they started doing laundry. We did, talk about that. I said, look, you can watch me do laundry all weekend, or you can help do your own laundry. And this is what we expect that to look like. And then we can go out and do something fun as a family on the weekend. Yeah.
Well, and
so we had a lot of those conversations.
But they learned so many more practical skills from that process. So they're productive citizens and they know how to, they've been watching you. So you've been a good role model for them as far as the caregiving thing. And that's just an indispensable tool right there.
Well, it is paying off now. I mean, we're empty nesters. We've got 2 kids in college now. And people will say to me like, wow, your kids, like, and I'm like, they had to get their shit together. Like it wasn't an option. We just had to survive that way. So now, they make comments or like, my roommate doesn't know how to do their laundry, or, they can't even enroll in their own classes. And I'm like, yeah, but they'll also say, we had to do laundry at such a young age. I'm like, yeah, aren't you glad you have these life skills and, right. Teaching them how to make eggs. Like I was up and gone to work in the morning before they got themselves on the bus. And I think, in all those years, my kids maybe missed the bus a couple times and we had a backup plan. Look, if something should happen, we don't want you to miss the bus, but if it does, call so-and-so, their stay home person. They know that, I'm sure they'll be happy to help. Because they know how crazy our situation is. So yeah, it's paying off. Yeah. So I'm really proud of the young adults that they both are.
Yeah, I would have said, well, yeah, I had to do laundry. Well, yeah, I was going to teach you when you were 3, but you weren't picking it up.
It's funny because, like, I'm like you, Terry. Like, my mom had 6 kids. Like, we had major jobs, but when I look around at my kids and their friends, like, we expected a lot of other kids, but not even the equivalent of what I was expected to do as a kid. It's just funny how every generation's different.
Yeah, we had our things that we had to do, and I tried to instill that with my kids. They didn't like the cleaning part of it much, but I didn't care. I mean, I'm like, I don't care, do it. And I'm not, they're like, you're just being mean. You just want to clean the house for free. Okay.
Yeah. One thing, that's interesting in this whole caregiver concept is the duties typically fall to, of all people, the daughter-in-law, or at least the daughter. But I think it's interesting that And, Terry steps up and fills the role, with my parents. It's not really heavy duty caregiving, but she's in contact with them and, setting up stuff for us to go see them. So it's just, I assume that it's still pretty much that way as a whole.
I mean, it was like that in my family where the sisters, there's three of us and we called ourselves Sister Power, and we would put our fists together like, Sister Power, we'll figure this out, And my brothers, I had one brother that was really good. You had to tell him exactly what you needed him to do. Like he wasn't gonna say, hey, maybe I'll take that on. It was like, Tim, we need you to do X, Y, Z. And he'd do it. He would always do it. I've got a brother that's developmentally disabled, so he needed more work. And then of course I have that brother that it just, every time we inserted him in anything, it just frankly made things harder.
Yeah.
And with Jason, my husband, he had to do it because his brother lived out in Arizona. We were in Georgia. So he assumed it. And maybe I would have had more of a role in it had I not had my own thing going on. So we just were like ships in the night at that point, like dividing and conquering. And luckily our marriage had had good foundation, and we had already kind of overcome a few hurdles earlier on. We're married 25 years now. So we just rolled with it. I almost think like we do better in the big crisis moments than in the little things. Like, wait, you're not helping to cook tonight? Like, well, we can have a big fight about that. And yet like big stuff is where we shine, I think, as a couple.
And planning is important. We'll talk about this because unfortunately, we either as kids or as adults, we don't want to consider things that could happen, and so we tend not to talk about it. But actually the opposite should be true, is that we really need to talk about the what ifs. The sooner we can start that conversation, the better, because we want to know, what does our loved one want? What do they need? And
what are their wishes? Yeah.
What are their wishes? Even though we have to talk about death sometimes, what are your wishes at that time? The do not resuscitate agreements. Where's all this paperwork? Because it's like, my parents have been awesome. They've created all the paperwork needed in case they pass. Now, the question always is, where is that bundle of paperwork? Because it's at the lawyer's office getting redone, or it's at the house, they're looking it over, or it could be, somewhere else. Yeah. So always, it's good to find out where is this stuff, just in case we need it.
It's so important. And, I call that practical self-care, frankly, because it's peace of mind. It allows you in the end, like none of us are getting out of earth alive. Like we are all going to die at some point. And so I want not only to have a good life, but I want to have a good death. Yeah. And I want that for my family members. And I think the more what I've learned, through my dad's situation, my dad passed first, and then my mother-in-law, and then last year my mom. And we were much more together for mom, by then, because we had lived through it. And, dad, he was super organized. He had given us our lawyer's number, so we knew who to call when stuff happened. But we also didn't know everything. Like we had thought they were much more financially sound than they were. We got in, we realized he had canceled their life insurance. And he kept everything, which is good and bad, because then you're like, well, which of this is the right?
So much to look through, right?
Yes, so much to look through. But he was very organized, and we figured it out. And when Dad was in hospice, we came across this pamphlet called 5 Wishes. 5wishes.org it helps you have that conversation. And it was too late for Dad by that point, but we did do that with my mom, and we had conversations with her about it. We knew, what hymns she liked in her memorial. We knew that she wanted a Catholic mass. We knew that she wanted to be cremated, and my dad was cremated, and we were lugging all these boxes around in our house at that point. Or in her house. So my mom and my dad were cremated, but buried in the same plot. I learned that you can get 2 boxes in the same plot. And it was, I think it's important to know what you want that to look like. And then it allowed us, when my mom had bonus years, I call it, because of not necessarily my caregiving, but it was my sister. She lived with my sister and hands-on the last 4 years. She lived many more years than we thought she would. And because of that, we were able to video different conversations and ask her different questions, and we knew the end was coming, but we could just be in the moment rather than worrying about all the decision making. I mean, there's still a lot of work. There's always going to be a lot of work and grief. It's exhausting, but it made it better that we could just be there.
Yeah. You brought up the point that things weren't exactly the way that y'all thought they were financially, but let's talk about that as far as the condition of a loved one. When it seems like when there's two elderly spouses living together, and one of them is a little worse off than the other, the other one seems to overcompensate. And unless we really pay attention, know what to look for, maybe ask some probing questions, maybe surprise visits, things like that, it's important we do that, because, again, we can be surprised when the healthier one passes, and then all of a sudden it's like the other one is in so much worse shape than what we actually thought. And I think it can go to getting the healthier one the support and help that they need, earlier as well, too. So, yeah.
I mean, looking back on it, there were my dad was burned out for sure. There were some big signs. One of them was like this, I think it was an American Idol, and they did this like big donation on the TV screen, and he sent this scathing email to myself and my siblings afterwards of like, how can all these random strangers provide so much help to this cause, and yet my own family was just really like passive aggressive and made us feel terrible. But he'd never really asked for things, but it was things like that he started doing that we knew he needed more help. And he expected it, frankly. Like, he was like, we had difficult conversations about, well, if you really want us to be more involved in your life, you need to move back. Like, they had lived in Atlanta at one point, and they retired at the in Amelia Island, Florida. And, we're 6 hours away from family. And that conversation never went well. My dad was very firm. He said, we are staying here. You are our children. We expect you to help with us. And so we, then did this tag team thing. But to your point, like, we would go down there and visit. Beautiful place to visit, although my parents hadn't set a toe in the sand in probably the last 10 years of my mom and dad's life down there. And we would notice that they were having like popcorn for dinner. There was like moldy food. Like, one of my big jobs every time I'd go down there was cleaning out the refrigerator, and oh my gosh, it was like things were just growing and rotting in there. I'm like, what are you all surviving on? Oh, we have popcorn, we're having yogurt, your dad will pick something up. Like, that was his sanity as he would go out. And they were both morbidly obese, and food was their comfort, and it just was like spiraling and making it even worse. But we did get some help. We, found somebody on Craigslist that would come in and help, make a ham and a thing of soup and do some of my mom's personal care. And and then her hours started to get more and more, and that worked for a while. It's like things work for a while, and then something happens, and we have to pivot and had to figure out something else. But we knew that they were never going to move closer, and that was hard until my dad passed, and it was like, Mom, you cannot stay here by yourself. You are not capable. In her head, she thought she was. Right. And I remember getting so mad at her and giving her a piece of paper. I'm like, you write down how this is supposed to look in your head. Like, I don't understand. Like, I'm the tough love daughter, first of all. I don't know if you picked up on that, but I'm the one that's like, that's crazy. And, but it did take me getting really emotional and vulnerable and letting her know how her choices and what she and Dad were doing and how they were affecting all of our health and happiness. And that was really, I think, what kind of, and then her financial state too is like, look, you can't rent your place for more than it has to be rented for a year. Like, you can't stay here. We can't afford to keep you here. It sucked. Yeah. Frankly, it sucked. And I don't know how we did it, frankly, looking back on it.
Oh my God. And that's when everybody knows I'm serious, is when I get into that emotional state. Oh my gosh. It's been years. I can still get the little cracky voice and the glossy eyes. I'm like, you're just talking about it. I'm like, oh gosh. And I felt it too, because we did that same thing.
Yeah. Man, I had a really good thought there. Just like, bam, evaporated. But we'll just say, getting those observations. And, I was going to say, a lot of times what I've observed with my parents will say is that, like mom she'll base decisions or actions on things like maybe 20 years ago. And, she's in good health and good state of mind. It's not that it's a bad thing, but she doesn't realize that she's aged. I mean, she actually thinks that she's younger than me somehow. I don't know how she gets that math done. She's like, I think when I turned 40, she's like, well, you're finally older than me now. I'm like, well, I don't know how that works.
It is a crazy thought. Like, I'm 50 this year, and I think about I do think about well, my parents were 50, and I'm like, I'm 28 in my head for sure. Right. Like, I froze myself there, but I get what you're like. The doctor, one of mom's doctors said it great. He's like, she's detached. I'm like, that's it. She's detached from reality. Like, she would frequently, I had to set boundaries when she lived nearby because of work and kids' responsibilities and everything. And my own, I needed time to recharge. And so Wednesday night was kind of ended up being our night where I would go after work. I would bring a picnic. We would, do some of the things on her list. And, but this was like boundary setting over time. I was like, Mom, I can't, every time you call me, drop everything and fix stuff. And, I would get there and she'd be like, well, you can watch a movie, right? You can do this. And I'm like, Mom, I got to get up and work. I get up at 5 a.m. I got to go work. I got to go to bed so I can go to work tomorrow. And she would yell at me about, coming to take her to doctor's appointments, and she was in a wheelchair, and I would make the earliest appointment that I could in the morning because one, chances of it getting delayed were less. Right. I'd either do that one or the one right after lunch, right? Like those are your best chances of getting in and out of time. And she would be like, you move too fast. Why do we have to do this so early? I was like, Mom, it's like a half day for me every time I take you to a doctor's appointment because, you move slow. We got to drive there, and then you miss a meal. I gotta cover a meal, and I want to spend time with you while we're out. We might as well. Like it's an event.
Yeah.
And she just was, like you said, just detached. And we would have a lot of arguments. Usually, what I would do is get her in the car, and I would turn the 50s music on, and that would recover us.
Yeah. Yeah, because we just, my mom and stepdad just downsized. And, before that event, I was like, you need to give yourself some time. This is going to be not only emotionally hard trying to sort through what you want to keep, but it's going to be physically demanding because they had a 2-story home. So up and down the stairs, who are you going to get to carry this stuff outside or to the storage or deal with it? It's like there's a lot of, she's like, oh, no, it's I've got it all planned. I'm gonna take care of it this weekend. And I'm like,
and they had been there 25 years.
Yeah, about 35.
Yeah, 35.
I'm like, I'm sorry, and she's like, oh yeah, I've got it planned out. Where it's just I'm gonna get it done this weekend. And so like Monday morning, she called and she's like, I'm so tired. I said, she's like, I think you might be right. This might be a really big job.
Yes. I'm thinking I can barely go through this office in a weekend.
Right. So,
you get interrupted all the time with life and dogs and bathroom breaks
and dogs and more.
Yeah. When Mom she wasn't mobile. And when we moved her out of her condo down there, because she wasn't mobile, we had basically like take things to her and like, what about this? What about this? And, so many books. She collected first edition books, and
oh my gosh.
They have a place in Michigan that now is my sister's home, and going through all of those books, it's like, I love books. And the writing and the reading those are things I inherited from my mom for sure. But it was a lot of stuff. I think that generation too just likes a lot of stuff. And I found as a caregiver, maybe it was that. Maybe it was just like, oh my gosh, looking around. But I wanted less to take care of. Yeah. I was simplifying things. I would even like go in my wardrobe and I would hear about something called a Project 333. It was like 33 items in a 3-month seasonal capsule, and, just less decisions to make. It was like, okay, these are my things I wear. Like, this is it. I don't have to go crazy and almost like, what was it, Steve Jobs wearing the black turtleneck and it was like,
yes,
it was one less thing he had to think about. And that kind of stuff, I was so attracted to figuring out, how to make the meal plan easy, like anything that I could create a system around because I just didn't want to take care of more stuff.
Well, it's called decision fatigue, and it's a real thing. I mean, if you think about the decisions that you make in a day, some consciously, some you just do subconsciously, and then the amount of information that comes at us each day, I mean, it can be overwhelming. I think those systems are, and I've actually talked about subscribing to that as, just like having nothing but blue pants and a blue stripe, having the same one. And I guess I'll have to wear a tag on my collar that says, yes, this has been washed. It's not the same. It's not the same.
Or we'll do like, pre-K kids or younger elementary school kids where you put the days of the weeks. Yeah. Like granimals.
Yeah. Cause I'm like, and somebody like me, I mean, I'm jeans and t-shirt. That's me. So when I have to put big boy clothes on and go out to the world, I have to like, do these match? It's a thing, and it shouldn't be. So anyway, I think that's funny. But yeah, anytime we can create those systems to take those decisions, it's a big win.
Yeah, I think that's kind of back to the self-care part. I had found that stacking on habits, was a successful move for me. Again, like a system where, morning, my husband and I would talk, and it was when the kids were in school, I was like, okay, if something derails us from the work day, you're the morning guy. You're the morning guy. I'm going to be the afternoon person. And that gave me my morning, because I found like nobody really wanted my time at 5, 6 a.m. in the morning. So that was kind of really where I started carving out the self-care for me and stacking things, like taking my supplements, getting my water, packing my lunch, or listening to a podcast on the way to work, and just feeling like then better that I had paid my health first in the morning, was important to me, so that then I felt like I could show up as the person that I wanted to be throughout the day. And I get, yourself best. Like, I'm a morning person. I get weary as the day goes on, but I found that habit stacking was a real successful way for me to infuse more self-care.
Yeah. I was going to talk a little bit about the downsizing, because, we've done that. The one thing I will say is I do have, 8 or 10 big tubs of books. That's one thing I could not turn loose of them. So my kids will be hating on me for that when they have to go through all those.
Andy orders more. A couple a week.
I'm right. I'm there with you. They're a beautiful thing, but there's a guy or a gal that'll come and look at all the books and make sense of it all.
Yeah.
Or you can do what we did, and they can have a little free library in your name. We did this for my mom.
That's cool.
And my mom was an author, and so we have one up at the lake. We have a flagpole for Dad at the local park, and a little free library for Mom. And it's a great way to honor their memory. So I think I like finding things like that, like what you're into. Yeah.
Terry, you taking notes?
Oh,
you're
yes,
gonna have to set up a library.
That is a given right there.
Set me up a library.
Yes,
I will. How does that feel, Roy, knowing that you're going to be maybe...
Look at it. He's beaming.
Yeah, I like that's great.
Yeah.
It makes it all worthwhile, because I worry about my books. I want them taken care of, after
my mom was the same way. She'd look at me and she'd say, you're going to take care of my first editions. And I said yes, but I didn't realize how many there are. So then some of them I was like, I'm not interested in these Hillary Clinton first editions. These ones can go.
Yeah, I figure my kids will have a burn barrel. They'll be just like throwing them in there like we're going to get rid of them.
No, well, my mom.
It's money.
Yeah.
If anything, it's money. They even if they sold them and they went on an amazing trip, in courtesy of Roy Barker, a big family legacy trip, like,
oh my gosh,
I just think do something worthwhile, meaningful.
I don't know if mine are that valuable. They may not be able to go across town with the money they get.
You know what my mom kept? I mean, she has a lot of books, but it's like a lot of I don't know. She has a lot of everything, but she kept headlines. Just newspapers from like from the 60s, like when Kennedy was assassinated. She's got all those, a bunch of National Enquirers, and
valuable.
That's what I think. My sisters were trying to get rid of them, and I was digging them out of the trash pile. Mom's like, "What'd you save?" We were going against them.
It's funny when you're going through their stuff. It's like when my dad passed, he didn't have a whole lot that was like super meaningful for him. I don't have it in front of me, but the one thing I wanted, it was like, we were kind of like, is there anything that you guys want to remind you of Dad? And I was like, I want his bookmark. Um, he had this Budapest embroidered bookmark that just was like, that's how I remember, him reading it. And so I use that in whatever I still like to read an old school book at night because I'm not supposed to have the screens. And so I used my dad's bookmark, but in case of a fire, I'd be grabbing that, for Mom, it's like, I have some of her jewelry, I have her smoky quartz ring that I like. The one I'm wearing now is my mother-in-law's. So there's certain things, they don't necessarily have to be like really expensive, valuable, but they're just meaningful. I even took one of Mom's perfume. She had her fancy perfume of Chanel No. 5. And then she had her like everyday perfume of Emerald. And so I have her everyday perfume of Emerald on my dresser. And every now and then I just need a little sniff of Mom. And I'll it just kind of makes me happy.
Oh, that's awesome. And you can take pictures. I mean, if the things are bulky or if it's just something that you want to be, you're kind of attached to it emotionally and it would be a great memory to bring up. Just take pictures.
It's got to mean something to you, I guess is my point.
Yes.
Like if the headlines aren't important
Sentimental.
to you, then they got to go. Because we
Right.
can't keep lugging around every dead person that we love stuff into our life. Like it's just someone else is going to have to go through it at some point.
Yeah, right. Or our kids' stuff either.
Oh my gosh. I have tubs of my kids' stuff and they're
They got to take their tubs. It's fine, Terry.
23 and 29. And my 29-year-old lives in California and we're in Texas now.
Come get your tubs, kids.
I
Terry's
know.
Done. Terry, you're done with these.
The next time she comes, because I have a storage unit. We have downsized and I have a storage and a half unit that I just need to get rid of some stuff. But
That's another episode.
yeah, that's another episode.
Now, Elizabeth, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be with us. It's been a very interesting and enlightening conversation. Before we get away, a couple things. First off, what is a tool or a habit that you use every day, personal, professional, that you feel adds a lot of value?
Well, a couple things come to mind. One, I'm in a smoothie kick right now. So it's a good way for me to get all my fruits and, some spinach and some good stuff in the morning. And then lately I've been walking, like just old school walking these dogs, in between Zoom sessions. And I'm on a 30-day, 10,000 steps a day streak. And it's not like I'm running. I'm doing what I call micro walks, where it's just like 15, 20 minutes, 3 or 4 times a day. And I need to get up anyway. I can't sit here all day long.
Yeah. I
We need to
changed,
do that.
I've talked a little bit about, I changed watches from the bigger brand name activity watch I went back to the Fitbit.
That's what I have.
Yeah. I just seem to like it better. I've got I think the Charge 4, but it's got a new thing that cues you to get up every hour and get 250 steps in, which is good. Number one, because I could sit at this desk for 10 or 12 hours without ever getting up.
Okay.
And so it makes it break up the day to get up, walk around, kind of clear my head for, it takes less than 5 minutes, even just walking around the house. But the nice thing is, if I have time to go out and take the bigger walk at the end of the day, I've already got 2,000, 2,500 steps towards my goal just from those little intermittent walks through the day.
Yeah. I love that little reminder session. It's to 250 steps.
Yeah.
I'm a carrot person. Like, just give me little carrots. And
Right.
we can be in a competition there, Roy.
Oh my gosh.
Well, that would help with the 10,000 steps a day,
Yeah,
30 days, right?
The bad thing about me is working at home, there's been days when I've just out of bed to the desk, sat here. At the end of the day, I look at my watch and it says, 530. I'm like, oh, how pathetic is that I could go a whole day and take 500 steps?
My favorite days are when it's like 1 o'clock and the 10,000 step, and I was like, I could go to bed if I wanted to.
Oh my
right now.
gosh.
These fur babies, though, we've got a 1-year-old golden doodle puppy. She's keeping me healthier because I got to get her out and moving. just having a little nap right now, but we're gonna.
Ours are. You can probably hear them in the background
my
slurping
gosh.
up the water. I don't know what their
camels.
deal is. They really are,
Yeah.
and they take us for a drag. So it's kind of more activity, more exercise because it's
Resistance based,
Oh, my
trying to
gosh.
hold up and not fall
Oh,
down.
I got an old one. I just leave him at home. Yeah.
All right. Well, tell everybody, who do you like to work with? How can you help them? And of course, how can they reach out and get a hold of you? And tell us, show us and when you get through, just show us the journal one more time.
Oh, okay. Well, so you can reach out to me at happyhealthycaregiver.com, and that'll connect you to whatever your social platform of choice is and that type of thing. So basically, I've got a kind of a twofold business. I help family caregivers. I offer coaching. I do a complimentary coaching session the first time so people can see what it's like to work for me. I have the product, the Just For You Daily Self-Care Journal that people can buy on my website. It'll be signed, free shipping. And then I do, I facilitate a daughterhood circle here once a month in the Atlanta area. If people want to get daughterhood.org, you can find a circle near you. So that's how I help caregivers. And then how I help other businesses and how I really monetize my business is by working with companies and employers who want to hire me as a speaker to come in and talk about self-care and talk about caregiving, and also help amplify their brand. I do different content partnership packages on my website with my podcasts and different things like that. So it's a win-win situation.
Yeah.
You pay me so that I can help more caregivers. That's basically what my model is.
And that's an important. I hate to just drag this out. We'll end. We'll end sometime. I'm sure the tape will run out. But that's an important benefit, I think, for businesses to look at is people like yourself, because what happens is in the business, we have become detached. We don't know our employees. We don't know what they're going through. All we know is that one day they come in and they quit. And so, they may quit because they're taking care of a parent and they don't have time. And we lose awesome employees, knowledge base, and all that. And so I think there should be a growing need for companies to have experts like yourself at their call to help employees deal with these situations and have a conversation. Because that's usually the breakdown, is there's no conversation about what's going on in your life. How can we help? Do we, if we really want to retain this person, but getting some tips, tricks of how they can reorganize their life, maybe altering work schedules, maybe more flexibility where it's like, hey, we've got, like you said, you go to a doctor's appointment, you think you're at 9, I'm going to get this done. We'll get a bite, get home. I can be there by noon. And then the doctor doesn't show up or something else goes bad and it's like 2:00. But, we need to have understanding that maybe there's something they can do at home. Maybe they can work a little later in the evening. There's all kinds of ways that we can make adjustments. We just have to think about it.
We have to make a caregiver-friendly culture for sure. And a lot of times, what I do in some of my speaking events for employers is I'll dust off their own employee assistance program benefits, because I know for years I didn't know what mine were. And so I'll insert them into my presentation to say, hey, did y'all know you have this stuff accessible to you?
Right.
But when it's structured around that context, people will use it and get it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks a lot. I promise we're quitting this time for sure. Elizabeth, we thank you so much for your time. It's been pleasant speaking with you.
Yes, thank you so much. I enjoyed getting to know y'all better.
It was fun.
All right, that's going to do it for another episode of Educational. Of course, I'm Roy.
I'm Terry.
You can find us at www.ageeducational.com. We're on all the major podcast platforms, iTunes, Stitcher, Google, Spotify. If we're not on one that you listen to, reach out. Be glad to get yours added, make it easier for you to listen. We're on all the major social media platforms. Probably hang out on Instagram. Reach out. We'd love to interact with you over there. Also, you can see a video of this interview when the episode goes live. Check us out on our YouTube channel and some of our past guests as well. Until next time, take care of yourself and take care of your health.